Ethan sat in the packed subway car, suit perfectly pressed, briefcase resting on his lap. His earbuds pumped out another self-help podcast, something about maximizing minutes and owning mornings. His phone vibrated constantly, emails from clients, meeting reminders, a text from his assistant confirming a 10 a.m. deposition. He didn't flinch. His eyes were glazed, focused on nothing. Around him, the city buzzed with life, children laughing, a couple arguing softly, a street musician's faint saxophone melody drifting through the cracks, but Ethan heard none of it. He was chasing something invisible: productivity, performance, perfection. A frail elderly woman entered the train, gripping a cane, eyes scanning for a seat. Ethan didn't look up. Not because he was rude, but because he didn't even see her. His world was consumed by a glowing screen and the pressure to always be on. The woman wobbled slightly as the train jolted forward, and a teenage boy across the aisle stood to offer his seat. She smiled in gratitude and sat down carefully. For a moment, Ethan glanced sideways, watching the exchange, but it didn't register as significant. Just background noise. He took another deep breath and closed his eyes, trying to mentally prepare for the avalanche of work awaiting him. In his mind, helping someone or noticing a stranger had no slot in the calendar. No checkbox to tick. He was always connected: emails, podcasts, productivity hacks, yet he felt completely alone. Like he was sprinting through life with blinders on, missing the quiet, human moments that actually make it worth living. The train rattled forward into the city's belly, and Ethan remained still, unaware that life was whispering around him, gently begging to be noticed. The rain had started without warning. Ethan rushed down the street, dodging puddles and frustrated pedestrians. In his haste, his phone slipped from his soaked hands and splashed into a gutter. He snatched it up, but the screen had already gone black. Dead. For the first time in years, the world was quiet. Panicked and unsure what to do without his digital lifeline, Ethan ducked into the first place he saw, a narrow brick doorway with a faded sign, the Nest Café. Inside, the air was warm and still, filled with the gentle hum of soft jazz, the clinking of cups, and murmured conversation. No one stared at screens. No one scrolled. It was as if time slowed down the moment he stepped in. He sat awkwardly at a corner table, unsure how to exist without notifications. Then, from across the room, an old man with kind eyes and a worn tweed coat waved him over. "Plenty of space here," he smiled. Ethan hesitated, then joined him. The man introduced himself as Joseph, a retired literature teacher. They spoke, haltingly at first, about the weather, books, the world. For the first time in what felt like forever, Ethan was having a conversation without checking the time or filtering his words. At one point, Joseph sipped his coffee, looked thoughtfully at Ethan, and said, "I used to fill my days with noise too, schedules, headlines, voices in my head. I thought I was living. But I was just surviving. Then one day I realized, I was missing life." Ethan sat back, something shifting inside him. There was no ringtone, no buzz, yet somehow, this silence was louder than anything he'd heard in years. Later that afternoon, Joseph invited Ethan to his apartment just a few blocks from the cafe. It was modest, quiet, and filled with shelves of old books, photographs, and handwritten letters stacked neatly in boxes. There was no TV, no computer, no blinking lights, just stories, silence, and a strange, comforting warmth. As Ethan wandered the room, his eyes landed on a small wooden box labeled "Gratitude." Joseph opened it gently and pulled out a faded envelope. "This one," he said, handing it over, "changed me more than any award or achievement ever did." Ethan unfolded the letter slowly. The handwriting was shaky but sincere. A former student had written it decades after high school. The letter revealed that he had once stood on the edge of a bridge, ready to end everything. But that very day, Joseph had stopped him in the hallway, placed a hand on his shoulder, and simply said, "You matter more than you know." The student wrote that those few words saved his life. He went on to become a teacher himself, hoping to do for others what Joseph had done for him. Ethan blinked hard, the paper trembling slightly in his hands. That single sentence, so ordinary, so quiet, had echoed through someone's life like a lifeline. And it had cost nothing but attention. He looked around again at the books, the silence, the simple life Joseph had lived. Ethan had chased promotions, built a skyscraper of status, but what had he built for others? Joseph smiled gently. "The quietest things I did," he said, echoed the loudest in someone else's life. For the first time, Ethan understood, legacy wasn't what you earned. It was what you gave away, gently, quietly, and with heart. Back home, Ethan stood in the center of his sleek, high-rise apartment. The silence felt different now, no longer uncomfortable, but oddly inviting. He walked to the wall, unplugged the TV, shut down his laptop, and left his dead phone on the counter. For the first time in years, he wasn't rushing to fill the silence. He was choosing it. That weekend, he drove to see his mother. She was surprised to see him without a phone in his hand. They sat on the porch for hours, sipping tea, talking about childhood memories, laughing at old stories. No background music, no email dings, just words and warmth. Later, he found himself playing chess on the sidewalk with his neighbor's kid, a bright-eyed boy who had been too shy to speak before. Ethan smiled more than he had in months. He wasn't thinking about deadlines. He wasn't multitasking. He was just there. On Sunday, he showed up at a local shelter and offered to help. He handed out meals, shared stories with strangers, and felt something unfamiliar, meaning. Not productivity. Not ambition. But connection. And through it all, the little things started to come alive, the smell of fresh coffee from a corner shop, the soft rustle of trees in the wind, the sound of birds greeting the morning. He had walked by all these things every day, but never really noticed them. He wasn't trying to control life anymore, he was beginning to experience it. By Sunday night, as he sat on his balcony in quiet reflection, a thought settled into him like a soft whisper. Silence wasn't empty, it was full of answers. And now, finally, he was ready to listen. The sun was just beginning to dip behind the trees, casting a golden hue over the quiet park. Children played in the distance, couples walked hand in hand, and the air buzzed with the soft sounds of life, unhurried, unfiltered. Ethan sat on an old wooden bench beneath a tall oak tree. The brass plaque beside him read, "In honor of Joseph. He taught us to live quietly, but fully." His hand rested on a paper bag holding an extra sandwich. He wasn't checking emails. He wasn't thinking about tomorrow's schedule. He was just present. A young man passed by, hunched over his phone, earbuds in, lost in the scroll. Something about him reminded Ethan of himself not long ago. He gently called out, "Hungry?" The young man looked up, surprised. He hesitated, then slowly approached. Ethan handed him the sandwich and patted the space beside him. The young man sat down, still staring at his screen. After a moment, Ethan spoke, his voice quiet but sure. "Maybe what you're looking for isn't online. Maybe it's right in front of you." The young man pulled out his earbuds. They sat in silence together, listening to the world, the rustling leaves, distant laughter, the rhythm of life unfolding. And in that silence, something shifted. Ethan smiled to himself. He had chased noise for years, thinking it meant progress. But it was in the stillness, in the simplicity, where life had finally begun to speak back. When we stop filling our lives with noise, he thought, we start hearing what really matters. And from that quiet park bench, a new legacy began, not written in resumes or bank statements, but in moments, presence, and the quiet power of human connection. Conclusion. Ethan's journey began in the chaos of a crowded subway, where he was surrounded by sound yet completely disconnected from life. Like so many of us, he mistook motion for meaning, and productivity for purpose. But when his phone broke, when the noise finally stopped, life found a way to speak through the silence. Through a chance meeting with Joseph, a man who lived quietly but deeply, Ethan was reminded of the power of presence. He learned that legacy isn't built through busyness or noise, but through kindness, awareness, and the quiet ways we show up for others. Each moment he unplugged, each person he connected with, pulled him back into what really mattered: family, community, small joys, and shared silence. The loudest truths, it turns out, are whispered in stillness. Ethan didn't change the world overnight. But he changed his world. And that ripple, through a sandwich shared on a park bench, through words passed down, will echo further than he'll ever know. Because when we stop filling our lives with noise, we finally start hearing what truly matters.